Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if only I had another chance? If only I could start over in a new life? If only the next life would be better than this one? But what if you don't need another life? What if everything you've ever longed for was already waiting for you? Right here, in this breath? The Buddha never promised a better future. He taught us to wake up to this moment. Because this is the only life we are truly living. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not the next life, but this one, now. So the real question is not, will the next life be better? The question is, will you wake up in this one? Stay with me. In the next few moments, we will journey inward, into the present, into awareness, into the very place where your freedom begins. You see, there's a deep longing inside most of us, a quiet, often unspoken belief that maybe, just maybe, this life isn't it. That somehow, somewhere, there's a better version of existence waiting for us in another lifetime. Another world, another body, another chance. And so, we wait, we endure, we dream of starting over. We hope that when this life ends, the next one will finally be the one where we're happy, where things make sense, where we're free. But in doing so, we miss something profound, something the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree over 2,500 years ago. He wasn't looking for another life. He wasn't trying to escape the one he had. He was trying to understand it, deeply, clearly, fully. And what he discovered is this: freedom isn't found in the next life. It's found in this one, the moment you wake up. So many of us walk through our days like ghosts. We wake up, but we don't wake up. We breathe, but we don't live. Our bodies go through the motions, but our minds are trapped in thoughts about the past or the future, regrets of yesterday, hopes for tomorrow. Rarely, if ever, are we fully here. And so life becomes something we endure, rather than something we truly inhabit. The Buddha called this dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of existence. It's not just pain or suffering. It's the subtle ache of never feeling quite settled, never fully content, always chasing something just out of reach. A better job, a better relationship, a better version of ourselves, or even a better life. But no matter what we achieve, no matter what we gain, that ache remains. Why? Because we're not living in this life. We're living in the idea of a different one. We're here, but not really. Let's pause for a moment and reflect honestly. How much of your day is spent actually being present? When you eat, are you tasting your food, or scrolling your phone? Watching TV? Planning your to-do list? When you talk to someone, are you truly listening, or already forming your reply? Checking out? Thinking about something else? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel grateful to be alive, or are you already worried? Already running? Already wishing the day would be over? These aren't little things. This is how a life is lived, or missed. And the Buddha saw that missing this life is the true tragedy. Not death, not even suffering. The real loss is being given the gift of a human birth, this rare, precious opportunity, and then sleepwalking through the whole thing, hoping for a do-over. You don't need another life. You need to wake up in this one. Now, you might be wondering, what does it mean to wake up? Is it enlightenment? Is it some mystical state? Does it require leaving behind family, career, society? No. Waking up doesn't mean escaping the world. It means seeing it, clearly, as it really is. It means recognizing that the present moment, just as it is, holds everything you need to begin your freedom. You don't have to wait for better circumstances. You don't have to wait for a quieter mind, a more spiritual version of yourself, or a new lifetime. You can begin right now, with this breath, this body, this beating heart. There's a story from the Buddhist tradition about a man shot with an arrow. Instead of removing the arrow, he demands to know who shot it, what kind of bow was used, what direction it came from, what type of wood the arrow was made of. He wants all the answers before allowing anyone to treat the wound. But by the time he gets his answers, he's already dying. The Buddha used this story to show us how we get lost in speculation about past lives, future lives, the metaphysics of the soul, when the real question is, what are you doing with this life? Right now? That's where the Dharma begins. And here's something you need to hear. This life is not a mistake. The conditions you're in, the body you have, the mind you carry, they are not random. In Buddhism, we understand this as the law of karma, cause and effect. What you experience now is not punishment or reward. It's the unfolding of seeds planted long ago. But more importantly, right now you are planting new seeds, with every thought, every word, every action. So if you're always looking to escape this life, if you reject it, resent it, sleep through it, what kind of seeds are you planting for the next? The truth is, if you don't wake up in this life, you will likely continue the same patterns in the next. Because rebirth doesn't fix ignorance. Only wisdom does. This is why the Buddha placed so much emphasis on mindfulness, sati in Pali. Not as a trendy habit or a way to calm down before bed, but as the foundation of awakening. Mindfulness is the light that lets you see. It's the mirror that reveals what's really happening. It's the doorway back to now. So many people ask, what is my purpose? And in Buddhism, the answer is beautifully simple. Your purpose is to awaken. Not later, not after death, but now. In this very breath, in this very step, in this very moment of being human. Because this, not some imagined paradise, not some future life. This is where transformation begins. What happens when you start waking up? The world softens. Your heart opens. You begin to see people not as threats or obstacles or sources of pleasure, but as fellow travelers, just like you, longing for peace. You become less reactive, less caught in the stories your mind tells. You start to respond rather than react, to listen rather than judge, to live rather than run. And slowly, gently, you realize that maybe this life, with all its imperfections, its heartbreaks, its chaos, is not something to escape. Maybe it's your greatest teacher. Maybe it's the very ground of your awakening. Let me say it again. You don't need another life. You need to wake up in this one. It doesn't matter how much time you've spent asleep. It doesn't matter what you've done or failed to do. It doesn't matter how many lifetimes it took to bring you here. What matters is that you're listening now. That something inside you is ready to stop running, ready to stop waiting, ready to come home to this breath, this body, this heart. If that readiness is in you, even just a flicker, then the path is already opening. The Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." If one sentence from this talk can plant a seed of presence in you, then a new life has already begun, not in another world, but in this one. And that is where we begin. Now that we've touched the stillness of this moment and felt the call to wake up here and now, we must go deeper into why we keep running, why we reach for another life, another body, another world, as if it were some kind of salvation. The truth is, many of us live with the belief, sometimes hidden, sometimes loud, that this life is broken, and the only way out is to start again. We think that if we just had a fresh start, things would finally go right. But this belief itself is a trap. It's the illusion that peace exists somewhere else, sometime later, under better conditions, with fewer problems, in a better version of ourselves. And as long as we chase that illusion, we never settle fully into now. We believe the next life will be the one where we're finally happy, where we're rich, respected, healthy, enlightened, where we'll meet our soulmate, fulfill our purpose, find lasting peace. So we project our deepest wishes onto the next life, while continuing to neglect this one. But what if that hope, instead of liberating us, is exactly what keeps us trapped? The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from the world itself, but from the mind's reactions to it, from clinging, craving, resisting. When we say, "This life isn't enough," what we really mean is, "This moment doesn't match my desires." And so we long for a new one. But longing, however spiritual it may seem, is still craving, and craving is the root of suffering. It's easy to disguise craving in spiritual language. I want to be reborn in a pure land. I want to have better karma in the next life. I want to leave samsara behind. But even these goals can become attachments, a form of spiritual materialism. Because what are we really saying? This life isn't it. I need something else. The Buddha didn't teach us to escape life. He taught us to see clearly. That means looking at the very craving for escape, and recognizing it as just another thought, another wave rising and falling in the mind. He taught us to sit with our discomfort, our disappointment, our loneliness, and see into their nature. Not to replace them with fantasies about the future, but to observe how they arise and pass away. And when we do that, when we meet our pain instead of fleeing from it, something miraculous happens. We begin to notice that the pain itself isn't permanent. It has no solid core. It moves, shifts, dances. What makes it stick around is our resistance to it, our stories about it, our refusal to simply be with what is. So when you say, "I'll be happier in my next life," ask yourself, why not now? What are you waiting for? What are you postponing? Because everything you think you'll get later, you could begin cultivating now, in this breath, with this body, in this very circumstance. The Buddha never said, "Just wait for your next life and everything will be better." He said, "Be a light unto yourself." He said, "Work out your liberation with diligence." He said, "The time is now." In fact, one of his final teachings was a reminder of impermanence. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence, not someday. Now, we spend so much energy wishing things were different. But the moment we stop, the moment we turn inward, breathe, and look, we realize that peace was never hiding. It was only obscured by our insistence that life be something other than what it is. That's the essence of the second noble truth. The origin of suffering is craving. Not just craving for pleasure, or wealth, or power, but even the craving for a different experience. A more spiritual life. A more peaceful future. The craving for another life is still craving. And craving, no matter how well dressed, leads to suffering. But here's the paradox. The less we crave another life, the more fully we show up for this one. And in doing so, we actually begin to change our karma. Because karma isn't something fixed. It's dynamic. It's created and altered by every thought, word, and deed. If you meet this moment with awareness instead of resistance, with compassion instead of complaint, you're not only transforming your present, you're reshaping your future. So what if this life, even with its messiness, its heartbreak, its limitations, is exactly the life you need? What if it holds the perfect conditions for your awakening? What if your deepest wounds are the very doorways to your liberation? There's a profound teaching in Buddhism called turning poison into medicine. It means that the very things we want to escape can become our teachers. That's why the Buddha taught mindfulness of suffering, not avoidance of it. Because suffering, when met with wisdom, becomes fuel for awakening. If you think you need another life to be free, you will spend this one asleep. But if you understand that this life is your path, your classroom, your field of practice, you will begin to see the sacred in the ordinary. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Listening deeply to a friend becomes an act of love. Sitting quietly with your breath becomes a revolution. You don't need to wait until you're someone else. You don't need to wait until your mind is quieter, your body healthier, your life more stable. The conditions for awakening are already here, because you are here. Breathing, listening, present. Maybe you've lived many lifetimes before. Maybe you will live many more. But none of them are happening right now. This is the only life you can practice in. This is the only moment you can wake up in. So when the mind says, next time, gently bring it back to, this time. When the mind says, maybe later, smile and say, how about now? And when the mind says, I'll be happy when, answer with, can I be peaceful now? Even just for one breath? That's the beginning of freedom. Not in the far-off future, but in this sacred, fleeting, miraculous now. In the next part of our journey, we'll look more deeply at how the Buddha himself woke up, not in a temple, not in a heaven, not in another world, but right here on earth, under a tree, in a human body, just like yours and mine. His story reminds us, awakening is not for the few. It's not far away. It's not something reserved for monks or saints or future lives. It's something you begin, the moment you stop waiting. If the idea that we must awaken now, not later, not in another life, feels overwhelming or unreachable, then perhaps we need to return to the story of the one who walked this path first. The one who showed us that awakening isn't only possible, it's immediate. It's human. It's real. We're talking about the Buddha. But not the golden statue. Not the symbol on altars. We're talking about Siddhartha, a man, a seeker, someone who, like you, wrestled with life's deepest questions. Before he became the Buddha, he was just a person asking what many of us ask. Why is there so much suffering? Why do people grow old, get sick, die? Why is nothing truly satisfying? He didn't ask these things from a place of luxury or ease. Yes, he was born a prince. But that life of pleasure didn't silence his heart's deeper questions, it only made them louder. So he left it behind. Not to escape, but to seek truth. For 6 long years, Siddhartha walked through extremes, denying himself food, sleep, comfort, trying to force enlightenment. He followed all the ideas of his time, that liberation must come from renouncing the body, starving the senses, breaking the will. But he discovered that pain alone doesn't free you. Neither does pleasure. Both are traps in their own way. And so, on the verge of collapse, he sat down beneath a tree and made a vow. Not to a god, not to a future life, but to his own sincere effort. He said, I will not rise from this seat until I've found the truth. And he didn't go anywhere. He didn't try to escape the world. He sat with it, faced it, observed his mind, the desires, the fears, the illusions, with steady awareness. And in that deep presence, something shifted, not because he ran away, but because he stayed. He saw through the mind's games. He saw how clinging creates suffering. He saw how suffering continues the cycle of rebirth, not just across lifetimes, but moment to moment. And in that seeing, he let go. And when he let go, he woke up. Let's pause here, because this moment matters. The Buddha didn't awaken in another realm. He didn't need another life. He awakened in this one, under a tree, with his body aching, his stomach empty, his past still behind him, his future uncertain. And that's exactly why his awakening is so powerful. It's not a myth, it's a reminder. If he could awaken right here, so can we. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be a monk. You don't need to have everything figured out. What you need is the willingness to sit down, stay with your experience, and look deeply. The Buddha's story is not about some supernatural event. It's about honesty, courage, stillness, and attention. What he saw, we can see. What he realized, we can realize. Because the nature of the mind has not changed. Craving, fear, confusion, they still arise. But so does awareness. So does the possibility of seeing clearly. So does the opportunity, in every breath, to step out of the dream and into the truth. There's a reason the Buddha's first teaching was about the Four Noble Truths. He didn't begin with philosophy or metaphysics. He began with direct experience. Life has suffering. Suffering has causes. There is a way to end suffering. And that way is available now. He didn't say, maybe in your next life, you'll figure it out. He said, this is the path. A path of mindfulness, effort, ethical living, deep understanding, not in theory, but in action, and most importantly, in this moment. But here's where it gets subtle and beautiful. The path doesn't start with changing your life. It starts with being present for your life. The Buddha didn't teach us to abandon our families or run from our jobs. He taught us to bring presence into whatever we do. Whether you're washing a dish, driving to work, or sitting in silence, that can be the place of awakening. Why? Because the truth isn't hiding in some temple or sacred mountain. It's here, in your breath, in your body, in your next thought, your next step. That's why in the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness, the Buddha points us back to our own experience. Be mindful of the body in the body, feelings in the feelings, mind in the mind, phenomena in phenomena. It's a way of saying, start exactly where you are. There's a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What changes isn't the task, it's the mind that meets it. When you wake up, even the ordinary becomes sacred. Even suffering becomes insight. Even boredom becomes peace. That's why the Buddha's awakening wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning of a new kind of seeing. One not based on wishing for another world, but grounded in loving the world as it is. He didn't escape samsara by running away. He saw through it by understanding it. And through that understanding, he found freedom. And now, we are given the same opportunity. Not through blind belief, not through waiting, but through looking deeply into our own lives. Ask yourself, where am I avoiding presence? What parts of my life do I label not spiritual, not sacred, not worth my full attention? Because those very places are your training ground. Those are your Bodhi trees. Those are the exact conditions you've been given, not by accident, but by karma, for your awakening. You see, there's a hidden danger in dreaming of another life. It lets us delay our responsibility. It gives us an excuse to keep sleepwalking. But Buddhism is not a religion of delay. It's a tradition of immediacy, of courage, of presence. So what can you do today, right now, to honor the Buddha's path? Not in grand gestures, but in small choices. Can you pause before reacting? Can you breathe before speaking? Can you really listen when someone talks to you? Can you put your phone down and feel the world around you? These may seem small, but they are not. They are the building blocks of awakening. Each moment of mindfulness is a step away from confusion. Each act of compassion is a crack in the shell of ego. Each breath of awareness is a glimpse into freedom. You don't need another life. You need to trust that this one, imperfect, messy, beautiful, is enough. Not because it gives you everything you want, but because it gives you everything you need to wake up. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into this presence, what it means to actually live in the here and now, and how the absence of presence is the real source of our emptiness. Because what we're missing isn't a better life. We're missing life itself. But the good news is, it's always waiting, right here, right now. You may be wondering, if the truth is always right here, why don't I see it? If this moment holds the key to freedom, why does it feel so distant? These are honest questions, and the answer is both simple and profound. We don't see the truth of this life because we're not really in this life. We're in our thoughts, our projections, our distractions. We're rarely where our body is. We're constantly ahead of ourselves, planning, preparing, predicting, or we're behind ourselves, replaying, regretting, remembering. But very rarely are we with ourselves, in this moment, in this breath, in this beating heart. We are absent from our own lives. And that absence, more than anything else, is what keeps us from peace. Most people live as if life is something that will happen later. As if the real moment, the meaningful one, is still coming. But that future never arrives. Because we're always chasing the next version of it. And in the meantime, the beauty of what is, the actual life we're living, slips quietly through our fingers. You don't need a future moment to be free. You need presence. And presence is not a gift you wait for. It's a practice. One breath at a time. One step. One act of noticing. The Buddha didn't say, "You are bound because you haven't reached the future yet." He said, "You are bound because you are not awake to the present." This is why mindfulness is so central in his teachings. Not as a concept, but as a direct and embodied experience of reality. Let's take a simple example. Eating. How often do you eat without really tasting? Without feeling the texture, the temperature, the sensation of chewing and swallowing? Maybe you're watching a screen. Maybe you're having a conversation. Maybe you're lost in thought. But your mouth moves, and the meal disappears, and your body is full, yet your mind is still hungry. That hunger is not just for food. It's for presence. And you cannot satisfy a hunger for presence with absence. You can't nourish your soul with moments you weren't truly there for. The same is true with relationships. How often do we speak without listening? How often do we look at someone but don't see them? How many times do we sit with a loved one? Our bodies close but our minds far away? We miss each other, not because we don't care, but because we're not present. And this is where it gets real. The absence of presence is not just a missed opportunity. It becomes a pattern, a habit, a way of being. We begin to think that life itself is lacking, when really we've just stopped showing up for it. This is how discontent grows. Not because life is empty, but because we are empty in the way we meet it. There's a teaching in Buddhism called Yoniso Manasikara, which means wise attention. It means to look beneath the surface, to go deeper than the automatic. When we practice wise attention, we start to see how often we're on autopilot. And we start to make different choices, to pause, to feel, to listen. That pause is powerful. It breaks the trance of constant doing. It invites us back to being. It opens the door to this moment, the only moment that's real. Try it now. Pause. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Just notice it. The rise, the fall, the coolness as it enters, the warmth as it leaves. That's life. That's you. That's presence. And in that presence, there's peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is real. You see, we often confuse comfort with peace. We think, if I can just get everything under control, then I'll be calm. But peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from being fully with the world, just as it is. When you are present, even difficulty has space, even pain can soften, because you are no longer fighting life. You are flowing with it. But presence is not always easy. It asks us to feel what we usually avoid. The ache of loneliness, the tightness of anxiety, the restlessness of desire. It asks us to turn toward the very things we've been running from. And yet, that turning is the beginning of healing. Because what we run from only grows stronger. What we face with awareness begins to transform. This is why meditation isn't an escape. It's a return, not to some blissful otherworld, but to the body, the breath, the heart, to the sacredness of now. In Zen, there's a phrase, when walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. It sounds so simple. But in practice, it's profound, because most of the time, when we're walking, we're also worrying. When we're sitting, we're also planning. We are always elsewhere, and in that elsewhere, we lose the intimacy of our own life. But what if we practiced coming back? Not once, not perfectly, but again and again. What if we treated each moment as worthy of our full attention? Each conversation, each step, each breath. What would happen to our sense of meaning? Our connection? Our joy? We would begin to feel what the Buddha felt under that tree. Not ecstasy, not magic, but a deep and quiet knowing. This is enough. Not because it's everything we ever dreamed, but because it's real, it's true, it's here, and that here-ness is holy. Presence also reveals something else. That most of our suffering isn't about what's happening. It's about what we think is happening. The mind is constantly telling stories about what should be, what could be, what we deserve, what we lack. And when we believe those stories, we suffer. But when we're present, we don't need a story. We can rest in what is. And in that resting, there's freedom. You don't have to fix everything to be free. You don't have to solve your entire life to feel peace. You just have to show up for it. And in showing up, fully and honestly, you begin to wake up. So ask yourself gently, where have I been absent? What parts of my life have I ignored, dismissed, judged? And can I begin, today, even now, to turn toward those places with kindness? Not to change them, but to meet them, to see them, to be with them. That's presence. That's the beginning of awakening. Not in another life, not in a distant heaven, but in this one, right here, right now. In the next part of our journey, we'll look more closely at how karma fits into all of this, and why trying to escape this life for a better one can actually create more suffering. Because if awakening is here, then we must also understand how our actions, in this life, shape not only the future, but the quality of this very moment. Many people misunderstand karma. They think of it like fate, some mysterious cosmic force that decides what happens to them. Or they think of it as punishment, a kind of spiritual justice system where good people get rewards and bad people get pain. But this view is not only inaccurate, it's dangerous. It takes away your power. It makes you passive. It keeps you waiting for some future life to fix what's broken now. But the Buddha taught karma as something alive, dynamic, immediate. Karma means action. More specifically, intentional action. Every time you choose, speak, think, feel, you are shaping your life. Not just for some distant future, but right now. Karma is not something that happens to you. Karma is what you are doing with each breath. This is why waiting for another life is not only unhelpful, it's karmically unwise. Because right now, in this moment, you are planting the seeds of your next moment. And if you plant those seeds with greed, hatred, delusion, what kind of life will bloom? On the other hand, if you plant with awareness, compassion, truthfulness, your whole world changes. Here and now. Some people say, my life is hard because of past karma. I must have done something wrong in another life. And maybe that's true, maybe not, but either way, the real question is not what you did before. It's what you're doing now. Because right now is the only place you have power. Right now is the field where your future is growing. The Buddha didn't say, fix your past. He said, understand your mind. Because it's your mind, not the world, that creates suffering. And when you change how you meet this moment, you're not just escaping karma, you're transforming it. This is liberating, because it means you are not stuck. You are not doomed. You are not bound to repeat the same patterns forever. But you do need to stop blaming life. Stop blaming others. Stop blaming the past. You must take responsibility with courage, with clarity, with compassion for yourself. And when you do that, you begin to see that karma is not some distant calculation. It's in your next word, your next reaction, your next choice. Do you respond with anger? Or with patience? Do you speak with honesty? Or with manipulation? Do you judge? Or do you understand? These are the seeds you are sowing. This is your karma being formed, not later, but now. This is why rebirth, though real, is not the point. What good is another life if you carry the same confusion into it? What good is being reborn if you don't learn to live? As long as you are acting from ignorance, no new life will set you free. It will just be more of the same, wrapped in a different name, a different face, a different story. This is also why awakening is possible right here. Because the moment you stop feeding ignorance, You begin to create different karma. The moment you choose presence over distraction, compassion over fear, truth over illusion, you are cutting the cycle at its root. In this way, every small act matters. Every tiny decision is spiritual. Because you are never separate from the path. Your path is the way you move through the world. It's the way you treat your neighbor. The way you drive your car. The way you speak to yourself in your mind. That's the path. That's where awakening is found. People often want big answers, big signs, big moments. But karma works in silence. In subtleties. The quiet patience of not lashing out. The invisible discipline of telling the truth. The slow building of habits that align with wisdom. These are not flashy, but they are powerful. They are transformative, because they shape the very conditions in which awakening becomes possible. The Buddha understood this deeply. That's why he didn't just teach meditation. He taught the Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Why so many steps? Because awakening is not just what you do on the cushion. It's how you live. And when you live with that kind of integrity, your karma begins to purify. Not because you're earning points, but because you're not adding confusion to your mind. You're not adding regret. You're not creating more division between yourself and others. And that inner harmony reflects outward. Your life becomes a mirror of your mind. And your mind becomes clear. This is why it's so important not to think of another life as the solution. If you live this life carelessly, unconsciously, hoping for a better one later, you are actively creating the very patterns that will bring more confusion. But if you live this life as the ground of awakening, then every breath becomes sacred. Every moment becomes enough. So when you think about karma, don't think about what happened 10 lifetimes ago. Think about how you're meeting this moment. Are you reacting from fear or responding from love? Are you closing your heart or opening it? Are you ignoring your life or honoring it? Because karma is not abstract. It's personal. It's your habits, your attention, your energy. And all of these things can be transformed, not someday, but now. There's an old story about a monk who asked the Buddha, "What is the greatest miracle?" And the Buddha replied, "To walk on the earth. Not to fly, not to read minds, but to be fully alive, fully present, right here, right now." That is what good karma looks like. Not just in future rebirths, but in the quiet dignity of a mind at peace. The freedom to walk through the world with an open heart. The courage to tell the truth. The presence to savor a moment without clinging to it. When you live like this, you are not waiting for heaven. You are creating it. And this is the real secret. The more present you are, the more skillfully you live. And the more skillfully you live, the better karma you plant. And the better karma you plant, the more peaceful and awake you become, not someday, but now. So the path is not linear. It's circular. Presence leads to wisdom. Wisdom leads to right action. Right action leads to peace. Peace leads to deeper presence. And the cycle turns, not as a wheel of rebirth, but as a spiral of awakening. This is what the Buddha offered. Not a better life later, but a better way of living now. Not escape from karma, but intimacy with it. Not rejection of this world, but understanding it so deeply that it loses its power to bind you. You don't need another life to be free. You need to live this one so mindfully, so compassionately, so fully, that there is nothing left unfinished, nothing left undone, nothing to regret. That is true liberation. In the next part of our journey, we will explore what it means to die without regret, not because we achieved everything, but because we lived with awareness. Because in the end, it's not how long you lived, or how much you owned, or whether you found the perfect life. It's whether you woke up, here, in this body, in this breath, in this sacred and fleeting moment of being alive. When people think about dying, most feel fear, some feel sadness, others feel regret, But deep down, beneath the surface emotions, there's often one unspoken thought. Did I really live? Not just survive, not just get through the years, but live, with meaning, with awareness, with heart. The truth is, we're all going to die. The Buddha reminded us of this constantly, not to scare us, but to wake us up. Because death, when understood rightly, becomes the most powerful teacher. It strips away illusion, it brings us back to what matters, and it asks the most important question of all. Are you awake yet? Dying without regret doesn't mean dying with accomplishments. It doesn't mean having checked every box on a list or having accumulated wealth, fame, or even spiritual knowledge. It means having truly been present for your life. It means not waiting for another moment to finally begin. The saddest thing isn't that people die. It's that they often die before they ever fully lived. They spent their lives postponing joy, postponing presence, postponing peace, waiting for the right time, the right relationship, the right career, the right version of themselves, and all the while, life kept happening, unnoticed, unlived. The Buddha saw this clearly. That's why he didn't teach us to prepare for a perfect future. He taught us to enter this moment, because this moment is all we ever really have. And if you meet it fully, when death comes, there is nothing left undone. No, what if? No, if only. Just peace. We don't talk enough about how to die well. In our culture, death is something to avoid, to fear, to push into the background. But in Buddhist practice, death is not the end, and it's not something to run from. It's something to contemplate, to understand, to befriend. Why? Because when you realize that death is certain, and the timing of death is uncertain, you begin to value your life more deeply. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop chasing fantasies and start paying attention. You start loving more freely, forgiving more easily, living more fully. This is why Buddhist teachers often say, if you want to know how to live, learn how to die, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of letting go, of ego, of control, of clinging. And when you let go, you become free. Imagine reaching the end of your life and feeling only gratitude. Gratitude not because everything was easy, but because everything was real. Because you showed up, because you loved, because you paid attention, because you used your time not to build a perfect life, but to awaken. That is dying without regret. But how do we get there? How do we live now in a way that prepares us for that kind of ending? It starts with mindfulness, with learning to be here, not somewhere else in your head, not in a future that doesn't exist, but here, in this breath, this body, this reality. Mindfulness isn't just a technique. It's a way of honoring life, of saying, this moment matters. I will not sleep through it. It continues with intention, with asking yourself, what matters most to me? What kind of person do I want to be, not someday, but today? Do I live with integrity? Do I speak truthfully? Do I act from compassion? These are not abstract questions. They are the foundation of a life well lived. And it deepens with forgiveness. Not just for others, but for yourself. Because regret often comes from the wounds we never healed, the ones we ignored, denied, carried quietly. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the story that binds you to suffering. It means saying, yes, I made mistakes, and I am learning, and I am still worthy of love. This is the kind of work the Buddha pointed to, inner work, soul work, not about escaping this life, but embracing it so fully that nothing is left undone. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a practice called Maranasati, the mindfulness of death. It doesn't mean thinking morbid thoughts. It means remembering that life is fragile, precious, temporary, and in that remembrance, we are moved to live more fully. Think about this. If you knew you had 1 year to live, how would you spend it? Would you love more openly? Speak more kindly? Forgive more quickly? Listen more deeply? And if so, why wait? That's the point. We don't need a countdown to start living. We need wisdom, we need presence, and we need the courage to stop waiting. So ask yourself now, if I died tomorrow, what would I wish I had done today? And whatever that thing is, can you do it now? Even a little? Maybe it's telling someone you love them. Maybe it's letting go of a grudge. Maybe it's simply sitting quietly and breathing, really breathing, for the first time in weeks. These are not grand gestures. They are sacred choices. They are how we build a life we're not afraid to leave. A life where death isn't a thief, but a doorway. The Buddha taught that everything conditioned is impermanent. Our bodies, our thoughts, our relationships, our possessions. And this is not a reason for despair. It's a reason for awakening. Because when we truly know that everything will pass, we begin to cherish what is here. We don't need to fear death. We need to fear not living before we die. And here's the beautiful truth. When you live with presence, when you act with compassion, when you walk this earth mindfully, you are already preparing for a peaceful death. Not because you've conquered death, but because you've made peace with life. And in that peace, there is nothing to lose. You see, dying without regret doesn't come from having controlled your life. It comes from having trusted it, from having bowed to its mystery, from having honored its beauty, even in sorrow, even in struggle. You don't need another life to die well. You need to live this one deeply. So deeply that when your time comes, you can smile, not because it was perfect, but because it was yours. Fully lived, fully loved, fully awake. In the next part, we'll explore how this awakening, here and now, can ripple outward. How one person, simply living mindfully, can affect others. We'll look at how presence becomes compassion, how personal awakening becomes collective healing, and how your decision to live this life fully can be the beginning of a better world. One person, truly awake, can change the world, not by giving speeches, not by becoming famous, but by living with such deep presence, such unwavering compassion, such stillness in the middle of life's storms, that others can feel it. 2. Awakening is not just for the one who wakes up. It radiates outward, like a candle lighting another candle, like ripples moving across a still pond. Maybe you've experienced this. You meet someone who doesn't seem rushed, someone who listens without interrupting, someone who walks into a room and brings a quiet calm with them. They aren't trying to impress you. They're just present, fully there, and in their presence, you begin to settle too. Your defenses drop, your breathing slows, you feel safe, seen, connected. That is the power of a life lived mindfully. It becomes medicine, not only for yourself, but for others. And this, too, is what the Buddha meant when he spoke of liberation. It's not escape from the world. It's returning to the world with a heart that is no longer afraid. When you wake up, the world becomes your temple. Not just the forest, not just the retreat center, but the grocery store, the sidewalk, your own home. Every place is a place to practice. Every interaction is a mirror. Every relationship is a path. And so, you begin to live differently. You speak with more care. You listen with more openness. You act with more integrity. Not because someone is watching, but because you are watching with clear eyes, with a steady mind, with an open heart. This is how awakening becomes real. It's not a lightning bolt. It's 1,000 small choices. To breathe, to pause, to forgive, to love, to stop running, to stop waiting for another life, and instead, to begin right here, right now, with what you have. Imagine what would happen if more people lived this way. Not as saints, but as sincere human beings, doing their best to meet each moment with wisdom. The world would change, not all at once, not perfectly, but deeply, quietly, from the inside out. Because every time you meet suffering with compassion, you interrupt the cycle of violence. Every time you respond with patience instead of reactivity, you shift the energy of the moment. Every time you choose truth over illusion, presence over distraction, love over fear, you are helping the world wake up. And this is why your own awakening matters. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. Your children, your partner, your coworkers, your friends, even strangers. You may never know how far the ripple goes. But it goes. Sometimes people say, "I'm just one person. What difference can I make?" But you are not just one person. You are a field of energy, a node of consciousness, a participant in a vast web of life. Every thought, every word, every action creates vibrations, and those vibrations affect others. This is not mystical. It's practical. Just think of how it feels when someone smiles at you with genuine kindness. Think of how it feels when someone really listens to you. Think of the way a single moment of connection can change your entire day. Now imagine being the one who offers that every day, not because you're trying to be a good person, but because your mind is clear, your heart is open, your attention is here. That's the gift of this practice. It doesn't make you better than others. It makes you more with them, more human, more humble, more whole. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to see less separation. You stop dividing life into me and them, now and later, this and that. Instead, you feel the truth of interconnection. That what you do to another, you do to yourself. That how you live this moment shapes every moment to come. This is what the Buddha called interbeing. The truth that no self exists independently. That we are all woven together in this great tapestry of existence. And when you see this, you no longer need to grasp so tightly. You no longer fear losing something, because you see that you were never separate to begin with. And so the fear of death softens. The fear of failure fades. The fear of not being enough dissolves. What's left is peace. Not the peace of having no problems, but the peace of knowing that this moment, just as it is complete. From here, you begin to live not as someone waiting for life, but as someone offering life. Each day becomes a gift. Each word becomes a prayer. Each breath becomes a sacred gesture. And this is not something far away, not something reserved for monks in robes. It is for you, right now, in your body, in your kitchen, in your messy, beautiful, ordinary life. You don't need another life. You don't need a better version of yourself. You need to stop and see what's already here. Already awake, already whole. What does this mean? Practically, it means showing up, not just for meditation, but for dishes, for conversations, for silence, for discomfort, for joy, for grief, for this one wild, precious life. It means remembering, again and again, that presence is always possible. That compassion is always available. That peace is never somewhere else. It's here, when you remember how to look. And yes, you will forget. We all do. You'll get distracted. You'll fall into old habits. You'll close your heart. That's part of the path. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to return. Again and again and again. Each return is a victory. Each return is a prayer. Each return is a doorway into awakening. So take a moment now. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. That's life. That's you. That's now. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just be here. Just begin. And know this. You are not alone. Across time and space, countless beings have walked this path. Some in silence, some in struggle, some in joy, and they're walking it with you. The Buddha, the great teachers, the everyday people who choose mindfulness over habit, kindness over anger, truth over illusion. You are part of this lineage, this movement, this awakening. And all of it begins, not in some faraway land, not in some future life, but right here. In this breath, in this step, in this moment. So don't wait. Wake up. Live now. Be free.